A very good evening to all of you, and I welcome you all back to our discussion series. So, today our discussion is based on how diplomacy and tourism can work together to strengthen Sri Lanka's future. So, I warmly welcome our guest speaker for the discussion today. He is Dr. Prabodha Lokuge, a senior lecturer at the Graduate Training Center and an external lecturer at the University of Vocational Technology and Open University of Sri Lanka, and also he's a researcher in internationals and tourism. We welcome you back to the program. So, so today's conversation will focus on practical diplomacy built in international relations and how Sri Lanka can use tourism to increase the exports and foreign income. So to begin with, how can professional diplomacy can be used in a practical way to promote Sri Lanka's tourism and promote Sri Lanka as a tourist destination in the world?
Of course, Kandra, as you raised, this is a very important fact, especially nowadays more than the other days ever in the world, because Sri Lanka is at a very crucial and critical stage because of the economical collapse and also the situation which is prevailing in Sri Lanka. Now we are struggling to raise and rebuild again after a big economically unrest era. Therefore, one of the key aspects of earning income to the national GDP is tourism. And tourism is based on international relations actually, because that even though we are living in an island, we can't be alone and we can never be independent, because that we are dependent in if we are struggling to earn the foreign exchange, because that foreign exchange is dependent on export, import as well as the tourism. Then not only that, there are so many resources and the sources that the foreign income is generated, just like the foreign employees. But most of the governments of Sri Lanka are focusing much more than the other sources. The tourism has become very crucial. But the thing is that whether we must know and we must question ourselves whether the tourism has been optimized and whether the tourism has fully used to boost the tourism. And so far we can't say that we are at the optimum level which can attract more and more tourism, because that Sri Lanka is totally rich with natural resources other than the other most of the regional countries of the continent as well as in the region of the equator. And not only that, Sri Lanka, being a small island, we are rich with both natural and physical resources. But it has never been popularized and famous among the world nations. That is why Sri Lanka still is struggling to attract more and more tourists. Yet our most close, one of our most close regional country, Maldives, gets more tourists rather than Sri Lanka. Therefore, as you said that diplomacy is a crucial thing, that we can play a big role for the diplomacy. The diplomat which represent a government has a mandatory responsibility to represent the government and the purposes of the government and the states. Therefore, if the government is struggling and giving the priority to boost the tourism, the diplomats should understand how, and they should think deeply how they can be contributed to the boost the tourism. And they must have at least a basic knowledge about the key strategies to develop the tourism, while helping the countries to attract investments too and investors. The diplomat has a unavoidable responsibility to attract more tourism, more tourists through practical tourism. For an example, conducting event and popularizing the destinations of the country and giving a good message to their working nations and the service countries. Then about the resources, potentials, and the unique values of the country, and it should be displayed to prove that our country has a unique place and unique values to those nations. In order to do that, they must have a proper plan. They must have a good understanding of the country which they are serving, and about the agenda and the interest of the people, and the opportunities as well as the events. For an example, even at their surplus as well as recession era, then which those nations are struggling with economical circumstances, they can't visit highly expensive and much developed nations because of low income. Then Sri Lanka is a good destination to spend their vacations and sometime even the season with low cost. It doesn't say that Sri Lanka get low money if they visit Sri Lanka, but relatively they can be promoted. They can be promoted the values of Sri Lanka and how they can spend their vacations relatively and comparatively at a low cost. And it is also one of the things that what I wanted to raise, that even at a negative point you can market the tourism. And when we think about our cultural and natural values, there are a lot of things, but the thing is, as you said, that the diplomat must have a better understanding about a country's value rather than they represent the country to an outside organization or outside country.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you answered some of the questions I was about to ask. That is, what are the, where diplomatic work directly supported tourism development, and also what diplomatic skills that which are more important when promoting sustainable tourism in Sri Lanka. And when it comes to the role of diplomats in boosting tourism, I would like to ask. How can our diplomats abroad attract more tourists to visit Sri Lanka, especially in this era where we have undergone severe disasters, the natural disasters, and economic recession as well? So, what do you have to say?
Of course, as I said you that there may be a silver lining in the dark clouds, then we can see there are potentials, so many potentials, even though we are facing very unrest and big recessional era. But then you can see there are so many opportunities rather than those negative impacts. For an example, now the popularity, even though the popularity is dependent on the natural and scenic beauty and the values, even though there are so many landslides in the central hills, and those news can generate an image and a brand name to Sri Lanka. Even through those disasters, the name of Sri Lanka can be promoted among the world nations. Then sometimes we come to know about some incidents and people when there is an incident, rather than it is sometimes it can be either a negative or optimistic or pessimistic value, but incident make us a propaganda. Then throughout the world news nowadays, Sri Lanka is talked much about, much more than the past days because of this natural disaster. Not only that, even the central hills, you know that the central hills of our country is the World Heritage, and most of those landslide has been occurred in this area. Throughout those natural waterfalls and the areas which the landslides and the total devastations have been occurred, we can make the documentaries even using those things. I can't say that it is the only thing, but throughout these things that we can do. And another thing is that since we are struggling with economical circumstances, that means, as you said, the negative impact of the economy, we can afford those people, those parties, that when a country is suffering with an economical sanctions and economically unrest era, the foreigners and the tourists have special value, that is bargaining value. Therefore, we can promote that bargaining value, saying that we are with this economically struggling era, then you have that bargaining value and you can get your services at affordable prices. Then it is also a tool. And as you said, that the values of the country has never been washed with these, even with these natural disasters. Then a lot of areas like the central cell area had been totally damaged. But the thing is that, as I said, these rumors and the propaganda can attract more and more people to visit us. And to ensure that the country is safe is very important. Therefore, recovery is very important. And while asking for the aids from and helping hand from the other countries, tourism is not only to visit the beauty and experiencing the pessimistic things. Tourism can be even through the war and such negative impacts too, and disasters also. The people who want to experience, for an example, a volcano. Volcano is a disaster to a country, but we wish to visit such places because that it is an extraordinary different experience to our country. Therefore, even though the volcano is a negative impact to the country, it can be used as a tool. You know that Fujiyama and even the Etna, those places are much attractive places, and there are so many such places which the tourist is dreaming to visit. Therefore, those landslides and those devastations, flood areas, can be an adventurous experience to the tourism. We must take the optimum use of those if we have a wise strategic plan to develop those. These devastation also can be used as a tool of attracting tourists.
Yes, thank you so much for that positive perspective. So we were talking about the role of diplomacy in boosting tourism. So if I ask a question, what improvements can be made to make embassies and diplomatic missions more effective in tourism promotion? And at the same time, do you think that what embassies and diplomatic missions do for the tourism is enough now?
Exactly, that is a matter to be questioned much, because I have never noticed for a long time we have taken very successful strategies to attract the tourists. Even though people are appointed as a diplomats to those embassies and their role is not understood by those individuals, then it is the most discussed matter so far, and it is to be considered by the government and officials when they are appointing the people for the diplomatic missions. First, the team of diplomats must have a proper understanding about the countries and country values and occasions and opportunities. Therefore, first of all, even though they are working as the experienced ambassadors, we must gather them and train them for promoting, because that they are working not as the diplomatic ambassadors, they are brand ambassadors also. They should branding the image of the country as well as the value of the country. That is a poor tactic which has never been used, and the poor quality of those diplomats which we have already noticed among those people. And in order to get the optimum use of this team of diplomats, what we can do is to aware the values of the country to these people, the people who represent the country. And not only that, even the marketing strategies should be taught to them. They are not only the diplomats, they are promoters, they are the brand ambassadors.